Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Crash Couch. I'm your host, Chris. This week we have Joel on the podcast. Joel, how are you?
I am well. I got it. It's 2021. Did I get the year right?
I think so.
Excellent. Okay, I'm on the ball tonight.
And also returning for his, I think, second episode of the season, maybe, we have Ernie. Ernie, how are you?
What's going on, guys? Also, to answer Joel's question, I think 2021 is just 2020 Junior, just so everybody's on board with that one. So,
yeah, I think that we all had enough of 2020, so I'm just so happy that 2021 is here and I can start fresh, even though it's not really much different. I mean, I guess I can just hope for it, right?
yeah, and I'm on board with thinking more positively this year, and then not falling into the trap, at least, of being a victim to it, but doing my own thing for it. So at least I'm on board with doing new plans this year. So I feel good. I feel good about 21.
I've also decided that I'm going to read more this year. I know that's shocking, probably, to hear.
Are you? Is April Fool's yet?
It is not April, no. But I actually, because my problem is that I have so many books, guys. Like, it is ridiculous how many books that I have, and I just keep buying them, and then I don't have I never had really enough time the past few years to read a lot. So I have this plan to where I'm just going to start reading a book, and if I don't like it, even though I'm a major I can't leave anything unfinished. I just got to finish it and go with it. If I don't like it, I'm just going to say, oh well, I tried. Screw it. It's not worth it. So
that's funny you say that too, because I just signed up for my local library, and they have Expanse books, and I'm like, yep, they're going on the list. So
yep.
I'll be joining that club as well, Chris, which I'm pretty sure that makes other fans of this podcast laugh, because they're probably the readers, and they're probably yelling at us when we don't know something that happened in the book.
Yeah, I know last week we had a conversation about, I had mentioned Bull, and apparently he is a character that doesn't he shows up, but apparently he is not around during this time in the main storyline in the books. And Laura was talking about it, and it's just as funny because we have some people here that's read books, we have some people that's read them multiple times, and then you have me that hasn't. I mean, I did start Leviathan Wakes, but then the show came on, and I was like, I gotta, for the sake of the podcast, I gotta prevent myself from reading it. Joel, you're a book reader, right?
Yeah, I read all the books. The problem is I read so much, and I read a lot for work. If I haven't read it within the last couple of weeks, I will probably forget most of the details.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why it's actually written down in a book so I can look it up.
So before we get talking about this week's episode, I want to ask Ernie what you've thought about the season so far, because I think the last time you were on the podcast, we were talking about episode 4. So a lot has happened since then.
Plenty has happened, but I also noticed a glaring thing that kind of has been missing, I think. And right before we hit the record button, we kind of mentioned it. I do feel like there's the tension of politics is missing this season. I really want to know what's going on with Avasarala. I don't know if they cover that more in the books, but I do miss the tension that last year set, where they had the election happening. I even miss Ehrenreich, that a-hole really did a number, but he was a great villain, to add to the season. But there's something about politics in the Expanse that I think just adds another layer. And I really do feel it's missing. I'm sure they're going to jump back on that wagon here and kind of show us where Avasarala is and kind of the position she's being put in now, especially with what happened with the airplane when the asteroid hit. But it's been really missing a lot, and I feel like the politics, weird to say from, coming from me, but the politics are missing this season.
I think the politics are there a bit. You'll see that probably later in the season. But, it's kind of odd you say that you're tired, you want some politics when, on the background of real life politics. I think we've all gotten too much politics in our lives right now. And that's cool. I like it because I like politics. I'm one of those weird people who actually enjoy politics and figure things out from there.
Yeah, because I think when I joined the podcast, that was one of the things that kind of drew me in. I remember mentioning things about how it felt like when they were in these spaceships, it was submarine warfare, but in space. And the claustrophobia that added and the tension that added gave life to the show for me. But in the weird way, the politics kind of did something else in the sense where there is a balance out there, and the balance is, between who should be in power, how much space should everybody have, who controls what. And I feel like those politics really drive a lot of emotion because it's kind of the producer side of it, right? Like you kind of see the back door of what's actually happening in space and the arguments that are happening. And when you think about politics now, yeah, I mean, they are tiring. America is kind of going through this tiring process right now. I think everybody's just done with it. But for the show, I do think it just adds that layer.
Yeah, and it's weird because when you think about it, like there's a lot of big things going on in like the political spectrum in the universe right now. And we had kind of mentioned this off air too, and it's sort of relevant to the whole point of this week's episode is we're getting a huge Naomi episode. And, I don't think that's something that Sci-Fi would have been able to do, or even if let's assume that Amazon would put this on TV somehow. I don't think it's something that they would do if they wanted to have consistent ratings. I think you can only really do it when you don't really have the time limit restrictions. You can sit and tell a free-flowing story. You can take time to spend on long, drawn-out like character moments and character development to really set and explore an emotional story. And like we have a lot going on outside of Naomi and Alex and Marco and a little bit of Holden now that he's sort of dragged into it. But with Avasarala, like that would be a big part of the story, you would think. And it probably is in the books because I imagine that they sort of weave it all together a little bit, more diversely than you would in this episode in particular. But yeah, I do miss the politics. I will have to say, I think they will pop up again, just not because I know what's going to happen, but I have that feeling that there will be an episode here soon before the end of the season that just like really nails that home, maybe makes up for what we were missing.
Yeah. And another thing I wanted to throw out there that I definitely want to compliment is, this whole thing with Marco and Naros is very intriguing. And it's kind of cool to see it from Naomi's perspective, because we don't actually see what Marcos is doing. We don't really know what the grand scheme is, right? We just know he's building up this plan. So I like that we're kind of following Naomi's kind of perspective of it with little glimpses here and there, what's going on. That part is kind of cool because it leaves us in the dark as far as Chris and I have not read the books. So that part is kind of cool. And not to wash it away, because I think Dominique Tipper is just doing a fantastic job at like touching the emotions of what she's going through. And then the guy playing Marco Inaros, Keanu Alexander, is a perfect fit. There's something about that guy when he speaks makes it feel like he is one of those revolutionary leaders. But I have to say, the thing that's probably interested me the most is the thing that we haven't seen, I think, in 2 episodes or so. And that is, I want to see more Amos. The thing that we've been missing with Amos is, one, he's a badass. Nobody's going to argue that. And I love seeing his moments where he just steps it up. But to see his backstory is pretty fantastic. And I wanted to bring up a point here where the episode where they escape the prison, right? And they kind of going through the woods and then they end up commandeering this house that's fenced off. And I like the moment where Amos is just kind of, his survival skills kick back in, right? Like he's almost back on the street. And just the whole conversation between him and Peaches was hilarious to me because she's like, dude, you just killed people. And he's like, I need to get back to the ship. The whole thing with Amos is so complicated because he did something good in the moment, right? He saved Peaches from certain death. The whole, her implants are working against her and she needed like a moment. And he saved her, and in his thought, he did a good thing, but the moral barometer of what he had to do to save her was pretty immoral. And I just like that he needs to be somebody who's tethered to the ship, so to speak. He needs Holden to kind of keep him in line. He realizes that, and I love that because he was becoming more of like confident in himself, and then he's like realizing, oh crap, I should be with Holden.
Yeah. And you see that in previous seasons with his relationship with Naomi, right? He needs a good person to keep him on the straight and narrow of the moral path, right? So he doesn't become a psychopath. And he recognizes that in his character as a fault. So he's very self-aware. And yeah, I think this season, I think Amos is by far my favorite character happening right now. And of course, the CGI is really good too.
Yay.
Yeah. I must admit, this episode right there, guys, it's very character driven. We're talking, of course, episode 7. It's the name of it, of course, is something I cannot pronounce. Oyedeng. And I thought there's a lot of dialogue happening. It's almost like we're getting like scenes from theater, right? You have these dialogues happening between 2 or 3 characters, and it's heartfelt or it's serious dialogue. There's not much room to make jokes in this episode, at least. And I think with Naomi, I think we have to look at Naomi in a different with a different lens, because she's disclosed some serious stuff in this episode. She mentioned the fact that when Philip was taken away from her, she almost walked out into space. She almost spaced herself because she was feeling such despair. And of course, let's not get into it right now, but look what happened towards the end of this episode. This is a very heavy episode, and I thought it was good. And before I forget, I have to say this to you guys. Let's talk about politics a bit and what's happening with the UN. Well, you guys are a pathetic earther-loving walwawa. Both of these. Which is what Philip calls Naomi when he becomes a daddy boy and not a mommy's boy. Yeah, a pathetic earther-loving walwala.
I kind of got some Star Wars vibes from this episode. And mainly like a mixture of like a little bit of Anakin with a good amount of like Kylo Ren. It kind of reminded me of how, you almost want to feel sorry for Philip, because I mean, regardless of what he's done now, like no kid really deserves to be sort of used by their parents as a child. Like, even no matter like what happened with Marco or Naomi, like it's important to keep Philip's he didn't choose to have the life that he did. Now, his current actions and the way that he pretty much blindly follows his father is a choice. And I mean, I guess you could see a little bit where, I don't know, he would have a tough time deciding, but it's just as weird that you have him sort of be like this Kylo Ren figure that we don't really know much of his backstory when he's first introduced. And then the more we learn and we find out that what happened with Naomi and Marco and her backstory here, where he was being hidden from her and then she eventually left and ended up where, we know her to be today. And he almost had like that little bit of redemption in him, which I think Naomi was able to trigger inside him, especially when they embraced and he was pretty much just like crying in her arms. And at that point, I thought to myself, okay, this is either the biggest fake out ever from him, or he's legitimately going to like turn or help her out, or at least help her escape. Maybe not, maybe sort of accept the type of person he is and accept his life, but he's at least going to help his mom escape. Obviously, that did not happen, but it'll be interesting to see, because his last shot of her is going out the airlock. And for all we know, I mean, I haven't seen tonight's episode that just released, but for all we know, he thinks that she's dead. And, he might have to have that thought on his conscience. And I just have to see if that affects his decision making at all.
You have to admit, Naomi looks pretty rough this season. like physically and emotionally, like compared to other seasons. Like it's a great makeup job. It's a great acting. Yeah, but she looks like not very good. Let's just say that this season. And every episode she gets a bit worse and a bit worse and a bit worse. Just imagine the stress she's under, because all she wants to do is find her son and have her son love her. And there's serious guilt issues happening because the way she escaped Marco and an abusive relationship, and the fact that she wanted to get away from the violence and from the political violence or terrorism, depending on your point of view. With because she was the one who created this Augustine Gamerara code that killed a whole lot of people.
I like what's going on psychologically right now with Philip. I think that I'm more interested in that aspect of it. It does seem like there's this tug and pull, and I think it's relatable even for somebody like myself. And without giving too much, I think even at my age, I'm almost 40, I still get the feeling like, oh man, I wish my parents were still together, And I like that he's a little torn between that. And I still think that sometimes this character comes out where it's his dad speaking. His dad will forever be his conscience, that voice that he hears. And I like that psychological warfare that's going on in Philip's head. It's interesting that he was given command right at the end. And that seemed to be more like, well, I'm trying to please dad and go back towards that area. But he does have a soft spot for his mom, and his mom is really being dragged through the mud. Naomi does look terrible in this episode. You're right, Joel. And there's even moments where she thinks she has a step above Marcos in what she says to him. But even Marcos is so well spoken that he takes that step, she takes a step forward, he takes 2 steps in front of her by his responses. There was that moment in the beginning of the episode where they were talking and she said, well, I know you won't kill me, because you don't want Philip to look at his father as somebody killed his mom, because he'll hate you for it. But then having Marcos be like, no, I just don't want his mom abandoning him again.
Yeah, ouch.
It was just like, ouch. Ooh, that one hurt. But I really like what's going on psychologically.
Well, you have to also remember, too, that, don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for Marco here, but we don't really know. And again, this might be discovered later. It might be in the book. We don't know what Naomi leaving had to do, or what that, obviously he wasn't a good person from the start. You could just kind of get that vibe. Maybe when they first met and she talks about how he pretty much just put up a front for the way he acted in their relationship. But you don't know what causes him to feel the way he does now. So that's not me advocating for him, but it's just, we have to keep that in the back of our mind too, of he has his reasons, and they're probably terrible reasons too. So it doesn't excuse them at all. But I that's something that I hope that we maybe get explored on, because you can tell, why he is the way he is, sort of, but I want there to be just something that really just triggered it in him. Hey, I know it's your mom. It is my, my former, I guess they were married, my former wife. And I'm willing to kill her if she acts out again. You have to be some kind of person in order to have that kind of, that feeling inside you.
There was a moment too, I feel really, I don't know if they're ever going to touch on what he actually did to her specifically, but there was a line that she mentioned where she said leaving Philip was a lot easier than being with you.
Yeah.
It was something in that sense here, but that was a powerful line, that you're willing to leave your kid behind because your relationship is that abusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a pretty powerful line. And I really do credit the writing for this episode, because there was a lot of emotional fighting without it being yelling in this episode.
Yeah.
A lot of little punches that were thrown that were just hurt,
Yeah. And Naomi did try to take Philip with her when she left. But her old friend sent the older guy with a beard, white guy, right? Bald guy, right? He was in it. And this is why they had a conversation. He wanted to make it right with Naomi. But it's him who helped hid Philip on the orders of Marco. So it's like still guilt, like there's still guilt there for Naomi. But she tried and she failed and she lost contact with her son because of it. Again, the evil, is traced back to Marco.
And now, like I said earlier too, where it just feels like Naomi is trying to go one step forward. There was that moment where she felt good being in the kitchen again and kind of reminded her of the Rossi. She's sitting down to eat. She's kind of got a little smirk on her face. And then all of a sudden they had a conversation. It's like, boom, back down in the ditches emotionally for her. Actually, that was probably my favorite scene in the whole episode because it was a pretty heartbreaking scene. It's like a et tu, Brute, moment.
Yeah. Guys, I really miss Fred Johnson. Just saying.
Don't we all?
Like what would Fred Johnson do in these situations? Oh, that's right. He's been assassinated. Because we have the whole proto-monocle. You remember that? The sci-fi angle on this stuff? Yeah, it's still around.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Joel, because I've been watching the reactions that I think I mentioned this a few weeks ago. There's this channel called Blind Wave, and they do reactions to TV shows and movies and stuff. And they just started The Expanse. And I think they're on like episode 8 or 9 of season 1. So they're like really getting into the meat and potatoes of it. And they were talking about, it was that one episode where they go to that ship, and I think that's when they first like find the proto-molecule. Right. I'm pretty sure I'm like not misremembering. That was a long time ago that I watched that.
Remember the what's the name of the ship?
The
Canopy. The Canterbury.
Yeah.
Was it the Canterbury? Okay.
And they're like saying, "Oh, what is this thing? Like, is that some kind of like organism, or is it like some kind of like living creature? Like, what is it?" And I'm like, "Oh, you just wait. You just wait." It's funny too. They're like, "Oh, maybe this show really does have aliens," because they don't know if it's like an alien show, if it's like a proper like real world sci-fi. And I'm like, "Well, you just wait. It reveals itself here soon."
Yeah, we got a lot of that from like last season. So I think this season is definitely proto-monocle light.
Yeah,
because the real evil people are, of course, the human race.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson out of all of this. Mm-hmm. Humans suck.
Yeah. But then again, you have people like James Holden, right? Like he's been, set for combat for several episodes now, right? When he's in the Rosciante, like he's wearing armor. That's a visual thing, right? He's been wearing armor for 3 episodes. He's mad. He's motivated. He's going to get Naomi back and the monocle back, and he's going to take on Marco.
You're right, and it's also a weird situation for him because, he's all like gung ho here to go after the proto-molecule and get it back, and then Alex chimes in with Bobby and informs him about the Mars trading with Marco and getting that's how he's getting the Navy. And he has to make that difficult decision. Okay, well, let's go ahead and you, Alex, go after Naomi, and I'll, continue on after the proto-molecule. So that's just like, it's weird because Holden really hasn't been featured, I feel like, a ton this season. He's not been thrown to the back, but he has more interactions with other characters, and I think he's supporting a lot of the secondary cast rather than like driving the main story, kind of like how we're used to. But maybe that'll change, in the next few episodes we have left of the season. But it was just really interesting to see in this one how he had to make that decision, because it seems like he's always having to think about what he really wants out of his life and what he values most.
Yeah, and I remember talking about that it's almost like a switch goes on for Holden. Like he needs something to do. He just had some sort of religious experience with the proto-molecule and having Miller in his head. But yeah, it's weird having him take a back seat and push other characters forward. And probably the most interesting moment I think he even had on this episode, where he talked about how he didn't trust Fred. He always had a moment where Fred was playing an angle, but the same thing came from Fred as well. Like they didn't trust each other, but they relied on each other, which was kind of a weird moment, but it made sense. I do want to see more of Holden, but I do feel like as far as his character goes, he needs to slow down and think about moments where he goes gung-ho because he almost got his ship blown up. But also, just to kind of throw a little scientific tidbit that I really liked in this episode as well was he noticed that the message from Alex and Bobby wasn't delayed, which meant they were kind of in close proximity. That was a cool little scientific moment.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, and they used it effectively in the storytelling. But just to go back to Holden, he's so focused right now on Naomi and all the other things, right? He has a crewmate right there, Monica Stewart. She's on board. Yeah, she's an attractive woman played by Anna Hopkins. And there's like zero sexual tension between her and Holden. So it's the... I get nothing from that, right? So that speaks a lot about Holden, how he's so focused outwardly.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. I really like Monica Stewart's character.
Oh, I do too. It's just great character.
A few seasons ago, she was really annoying, that annoying reporter. But this time, she's got a really important part. But like, I like her feistiness. She jumped on the ship, even though she really can't contribute much. Yeah. She's just there to report it and advance her career, if anything. But I really like her character because she's pretty much even questioning Holden when she needs to question him. She asked him, what are you going to do with the proto-molecule when you get it? And he's like, I'm going to blow it up. She's making sure that the moral high ground is taken. Whereas I guess anybody in media can get a bad rep because sometimes, it is all about their career and they'll do things that are probably immoral. But I like that she's kind of that moral barometer for him right now, and at least focusing him on what needs to be done.
And she's also sharing her information, which she receives from, let's say, a source on Tycho Station, right? So she's providing information to Holden, which is affecting his decision-making. So she's serving that role as well.
I do hope that we get to see more of Holden interacting with characters that's not on the Rossi, because, I don't know, it's refreshing to have a sort of a new take on that crew, especially after 5 seasons. Like, it's not that I want them to be separated all the time. It would be nice to have them all together again and going on a, their little adventure and not be always split up. But it is a little refreshing to kind of have somebody else be at that perspective and just to see who or how Holden is able to I guess interact with people that he's not really totally comfortable with.
Yeah.
See how they respond to him too.
Yeah, because the other person that Holden is responding, or at least having conversations with, is Bull, and Bull is pretty closed and cold. Not a lot of character to him, other than he's got like a killer instinct, it looks like. And I like that he has an interaction with Monica, but it's weird to know that the Rossi has crew that doesn't really have any speaking lines, and he's not really interacting with them. Yeah. It's a little bizarre, but it's nice when the whole crew is actually in the Rossi, when Naomi's there and Alex is there, and they all have some sort of interaction, because you can see this family dynamic, good and bad. Families have good and bad dynamics sometimes. So it is kind of strange, and I agree with you, Chris. I noticed that right away, where he doesn't have a lot going on, and he has some really important parts as well, but it'd be nice to see some more dialect from Holden as far as like character conversations go.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say, there was a big space battle towards the end of the episode with Holden, right? We got to see High G Burns, the use of crash couches and, juice. There's talk about 9 Martian ships, but no, that wasn't it. They were going after the proto-molecule. And you see this, really good use of the railgun and like a Gatling gun form to destroy a whole whack of incoming torpedoes. That was cool. And the spinning maneuver.
Yeah, the spinning maneuver was awesand
because, of course, spin. That's a good trick.
I see what you did there. And just to throw it out there, if nobody caught that, it's a episode 1 Star Wars response.
And of course, when they actually disabled, I can't say the name of the ship. It was Zamaya. And of course, they blew the reactor, and the line, of course, Holden said is, of course, that the F word. So it's like, yeah, that's fitting.
Also, if we could briefly touch on the spacing scene, that was crazy. Oh, that was insane, man. It left me going, oh God, here we go, another cliffhanger.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. I legitimately thought she was going to kill herself, or that there was something that, like, she had a plan to, I don't know, blow up the ship or something, because I read the description of the episode before I watched it, and it was something along the lines of Naomi makes one last desperate attempt to save Philip or something. And I'm thinking, like, what is she doing? And then she goes out. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's freaking me out. And then I see that she has that the oxygenated blood,
yeah,
and which is super weird. And it's funny because one of the authors, Ty, on Twitter, has been arguing with people all week about it, about how it's not real, and you can't really you can't do that, surely not. And I even saw it in some articles. I'm like, well, I mean, as super crazy as they've been about making sure the science is good in this show, I'm pretty sure it's possible, at least in an ideal situation, even if this was supposed to be less than ideal. I mean, it's as ideal as the authors want it to be.
I feel like I want to argue a point too, like, at least just throw it out there. What about the temperature? It's got to be way below freezing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem possible, but I'll go with it. I'm not going to argue it.
I think from all my years of listening to hard science shows and space shows, and of course I'm not a scientist, I don't know what I'm talking about, I just kind of remember you can probably survive about 10 seconds in space because of the temperature. They just made it more dramatic. So
according to Wikipedia, just kidding.
So I'm kind of like, I'm calling BS on this, but if it was closer, it theoretically might be possible, but it just goes to speak to Naomi's character and her intentions, right? Her motivations to survive, to hope, to reconnect with Philip.
Yeah. Well, if it was possible, that's yet to be determined. Was it dramatic? Hell yeah, it was.
Oh yeah, big time. And of course, we should talk about Alex and Bobby. Just the one line, right? That when Bobby found a bullet in her jacket or her shirt, right? Okay, and said, and Alex said, "You were shot," and she replied, "Yeah, a lot." And she then just takes out the bullet. That's great. It's the small things, guys. That keeps me going.
I love Bobby. I just love Bobby. I say that at almost every episode, I think. I love Bobby.
How can you not like Bobby? I think I've said that multiple times now about her in this season, but she's just so great. It's so nice to see her.
Yeah.
One thing that I saw, and I don't remember, I wish I could remember what the website was that was talking about it, but we
Wikipedia.
see, huh?
I said Wikipedia.
It was not Wikipedia. It was some article talking about how for this season, and this really has nothing to do with this episode, but I just found it interesting, this season that we're getting kind of a view of Earth from somebody's perspective, just like we did in season 2 with Bobby. And I don't know, I think that's a really interesting parallel, I guess, because I don't know what you guys thought of season 2 since you weren't around for the podcast back then, but I loved all the time that Bobby spent on Earth, and just seeing for the first time us really get away from the space exploration, and the space scenes. It was just nice to see it then, and I think it's kind of giving me that same feeling now. Not because I'm tired of them being in space, because it's not like they've been doing that the whole time, but it's just it's weird to think about like an alternate Earth, and I don't know, it just fascinates me.
Yeah,
I didn't even think about that. I didn't pick up on that, but now that you say it, yeah, that's beautiful. And by the way, that just warms my heart a little bit, Chris, because I realize that you get to experience my crazy as far as like fandom goes, because you're the person I text right away.
Yeah.
Be like, oh my God, that was amazing. I remember watching those episodes and texting you. So
yeah. So it's the first time Bobby saw the ocean, right? And now in this season, the ocean has become a weapon of mass destruction.
Yeah.
So it's neat, especially this TV show, the streaming show, The Expanse. There's always these contrasts going on, and it's excellent. And sometimes you really have to think about what they're doing, because they're always standing things on their head. I love it about this show.
Well, is there anything else that you guys want to say about this one before we log off?
On to the next episode, which I'm excited to watch tonight. So
yes, I am going to finish recording this and then probably immediately go over to my couch and turn on the episode.
Your crash couch?
My crash couch, yes, my crash couch. That was almost as good as Joel's pun from last week. I don't remember what it was, but it was a good one.
Oh my God, I just did a Joel pun.
You did.
Oh, we got to sign off. Let's get off.
All right. Well, I think that is a good way to end it. So if you want to follow us on Twitter, you can find the podcast Twitter at Crash Couch. I am on Twitter at The Curse of Chris. Before I ask for Joel and Ernie's social media, I do want to say, just if you wouldn't mind, go on iTunes or whatever it's called these days and leave us a nice 5-star review. I don't care. You can say that you just love The Expanse and you're just doing this because Chris asked you to, but it would make me really, really happy if you would do that. Even just one person. That's like all I need. Just one person, leave a nice 5-star review and I'll be happy for, I don't know, at least until we get another negative one. So whatever. All right, and with that, Joel, what is your social media accounts these days?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter at my first name, JOEL_Welch, which is my last name, which is spelled WELCH.
What about your podcast?
Oh, right, I do have a podcast. Sorry, it's work mostly. No, I'm on a podcast called the SciFi Pubcast. I do that with some other fine folks. It's basically we have discussions like in a bar style about themes and properties and science fiction and pulp culture. Episodes are released every 2 to 3 weeks. You can also find that on YouTube. So there you go. Check it out. Stop by the old pub.
And I want to say, too, that Joel puts episodes of Crash Couch on his YouTube channel as well. So if you're somebody that wants to listen to the podcast on YouTube, go ahead. Find it there. Also, Ernie, what is your Instagram? Because I know you don't have Twitter anymore.
No, I don't. Just Instagram. You can find me at Your Buddy Ernie.
Very nice. And you don't have any special projects right now, do you?
About to start a project, but it's a secret. And I'm kind of going back to my one of my favorite passions, which is videography. So
nice.
Yeah, I'll probably have something to announce next time, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, if it's anything like this episode of The Crash Couch, then it's going to be wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
And with that, we will see you next time on The Crash Couch. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.